At 28 years old, I decided to branch off and start my own independent dealerships with Xerox. So I started off as a small sort of local agency with them, and over a 10-year period grew that from basically nothing to about a $23 million organization. Ironically, another one was a donut company of all things. Reputation was outstanding, where you can go buy it at 1 o'clock in the morning and the people standing out the door. Born and raised in Dayton, Ohio, but from a business perspective, I've been basically in sales leadership my entire life. I started with Xerox Corporation out of college, uh, quickly grew through the ranks there over about a 6-year period, and essentially, so I at the end of that reign with Xerox, I was managing a lot of the independent dealers, entrepreneurs through about 4 or 5 states, and so I got that entrepreneurial bug early on in my career. I think at 28 years old, I decided to branch off and start my own independent dealerships with Xerox. So I started off as a small sort of local agency with them, and over a 10-year period grew that from, basically nothing to about a $23 million organization.
Nice.
Sold that off, I think it was in 2010. And once I did that, then I joined another organization in the industry strictly to concentrate on mergers and acquisitions. So I was working on that for a little while. As I think we bought 6 companies, and then they came to me to want me to take over the entire sales organization. And
So
that
this
was
is a this is essentially an entity that bought other dealerships.
at the time we were so the company that acquired me and certainly my company was a direct competitor of this company. So when I joined that company, they were about a $30 million organization, had aspirations to grow to 100 million and beyond. And so they wanted to create a mergers and acquisitions specifically department to go after and create those. And it was in the technology space, so managed IT, office equipment, cybersecurity, that type of
Oh,
space.
so it's not just printers. They're doing
Yeah.
more than. So are they buying? Is there like they're buying diversified portfolio of different companies
Yeah,
from?
essentially. So the IT space back in 2013, managed IT services was really starting to explode and take
Yeah.
off. And so a lot of the office equipment companies wanted to diversify their portfolios. And so a lot of copier slash office equipment dealers started getting into that realm. We made our first acquisition in 2013, and in the company they've bought a few since I've left as well, but they've probably made 8 or 9 acquisitions in the space overall. So along with that growth and organic growth, they've blown up over the last several years, especially after pandemic. So I did that.
Interesting. So they went from selling printers and office equipment to buying MSPs. And I'm assuming part of the drive to buy MSPs is because sometimes MSPs end up um, becoming the channel through which you sell that equipment. So they
Yep,
essentially wanted to go and acquire the channel and then control their destiny in a way and be able to upsell through that channel of the MSP.
definitely. Yeah, very sticky. Once you own that relationship, and unless there's serious pain points, you seem to stay in that relationship for a while. So in our case, we had a pretty large scale sales force on the office equipment side. And a lot of the companies in the IT space grow, at least back then, they were growing from referrals. So they were smaller, didn't have a lot of sales presence. It made a lot of sense for us because we had, 40, 50 salespeople in the field that
Yeah.
could bolt on these services and help grow it. After the pandemic specifically happened, that business exploded. We'd made 6, I think, acquisitions up until that point since 2013.
So six
And so,
MSPs, all
yeah,
MSPs.
yeah.
Okay.
Made a few
So
office equipment purchases as well from dealerships, but focused really in that space. And obviously a big push for reoccurring revenue with that industry as well. So a lot of managed IT contracts and cyber contracts that help propel and grow that organization.
let me ask you about the dealership business because I'm curious. So the dealer buys the equipment. Are they specific to a brand or they're diversified in the brands that they sell?
They're diversified. A lot of them are. We were unilaterally branded when I joined. We were specifically with Konica Minolta as their biggest sort of brand or vendor that we used. We diversified as we grew just to have many more choices, and especially because we grew geographically as well, just not organically within the Cincinnati region. We entered the West Virginia market. We entered the Lexington, Louisville, Kentucky market. And so as that started to branch out because of the other brands of the organizations that we not only acquired, but then also that those brands serviced, it helped us expand that portfolio. That company now is probably selling 4 or 5 different brands of products just to have a lot more services that they could offer.
Okay, and they're selling just copiers, or there are other equipment that they're selling?
Well, they're selling, so the companies are selling software, for example, on top of like document management systems, scanning software, et cetera. But not only the copier side, the multifunctional printers and laser printers. Also, this company that I was with got really into the production print area, which
Okay,
is a growth market, but larger scale production equipment, several $100,000, even upwards of, 7 figures in some cases. But that's a niche market, and they've seemed to grow that. We brought the right people in to start running that piece of the business, but that's the hardware side of the business that they're focused on, outside
okay.
of some of the peripherals that the IT space brings, laptops, servers, you name it.
So when you think about that, so that's an interesting. So that business, when you're as a dealer, do you own the inventory? Do you buy the inventory, or you're just drop shipping?
Typically buying and they try to the major manufacturers certainly try to get you to buy the inventory and house it in house. Because we were such large scale, we had certainly programs where and we were incented to buy and hold on to those that inventory and resell it out of our warehouse. There are some smaller office equipment providers that do have that sort of drop ship capability just because of their financial backing or the
Yeah.
lack thereof. But it happens in both scenarios depending on the brand that you're servicing.
Okay. And in general, this is just a one-time purchase. There's not a lot of recurring revenue unless you have some affiliate income coming from the software that you
Well, the
install.
services side are certainly a big part of the recurring revenue on the office equipment. So if you have a
Got it.
services agreement, which is a big lifeblood of these companies, where you have the ability to call for a service tech anytime something
Yeah.
breaks down, parts, you name it, and or supplies like toner that go
Okay.
into those devices. Those are part of a contract. So that follows along the one-time sale, which
That makes
becomes
sense.
sort of a big portion
Recurring.
of the business. Yeah.
And what is the like a blended margin of a business like that? Like a dealer, what is how much money do like a dealer that does 10 million in revenue, what is their EBITDA margin, if you will?
Uh, the benchmark would probably be 10% at a minimum. That would be benchmark. Well, at a minimum, benchmark would be about a 14%. The really
Okay.
high performing dealerships would be the 14% clip or higher at the bottom line of that number.
Okay. And that's included, do you have a sales force, like an actual like a really strong sales force that goes door to door to sell these things? And
Absolutely.
so and what is the comp of that sales force?
What is the comp of that
Yeah,
sales
like how
force?
much do you pay a salesperson that sells
I
equipment?
would generally say, I always used to say a good number would be a 10 and 13% of the actual revenue dollar. So if somebody was selling $100,000, or I'm sorry, $1 million a year in revenue, that person could stand to potentially make between 100 and $130,000, give or take the margin that person was selling if the comp plan was done right. Um,
Yeah, so
so
tell us about that comp plan. What is the comp plan done right?
Similarly, the way I've seen it is where, at least the one that I think did the best for us is when we scaled it based on the amount of margin that somebody was able to bring in, gross profit on a particular deal. So
Yeah.
certainly, sales reps would have their salary, their base, but where they really
Like
made the
how much
money,
would that be?
starting out, at least back then, anywhere from mid 30s to mid 40s.
Okay.
Senior reps were upwards of maybe 60 to 65, but then their commission on top of that, if they really did well, could be 2, 3, 4x if done right. And so what I love to see, because the good ones will play the margin game and build those relationships where they can capture that more margin. anywhere from like a 17, 18% all the way up to 25% on that gross profit of that dollar coming in from those sales. And so there could be some really good money made by the really good ones who have developed their territories and had the relationships. But that kind of gives you an idea of where that would.
So 20% off gross margin.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And usually the gross margin is what on an equipment like that?
30, 40% is probably a good average number, I would say.
30, okay. So 30,
Yeah.
40% gross margin, and then they will
Yeah.
make 20% of that. So
Yeah.
about 6%.
Roughly, yeah. So
Yeah.
that's when I say when you add in the salary and coming up with a 10
Yeah.
to 13% range of the dollar,
Got
that's
it.
typically where it would fall. And
Okay.
those P&Ls on those types of companies would include salespeople, service techs, admin, all those types of folks that would help run the business, for example. But service techs certainly, as the companies would grow, have to play the game of how many you need in order to take care of the customers and meet SLAs, you name it.
Yeah. And the salesperson is he also compensated on selling the service agreement?
In some ways, yeah. I mean, certain comp plans called for that, and certain comp plans didn't. But to incentivize, particularly when we would do it, we would incentivize them to create more net new accounts, and then we'd pay them on those services. Or if they were paid on services, it was a one-time compensation, like a one-times monthly commission on top of like the annualized contract that they would sell. But we would over pay for new business just to get new brands in the door, new logos.
Got it. Got it. That makes sense. Yeah, and I mean it's fascinating because when you think equipment, you don't think there's a lot of margin, and and then you have a good sales force. I'm always fascinated by companies that have like a large sales force that figured out the comp model to make it
Yeah,
work.
yeah,
Because salespeople are the blood.
they'll figure it out.
And
The
yes,
good ones will figure it out. Yeah,
yeah, it's figuring out like how can you get salespeople in your margin so you can, generate an incentive to generate new revenue, but still be profitable and still have decent gross margin and still okay. So if your margin is 30%, you're paying 20, 6% of that, so that means like 24% is left, and there's not much else, except your overhead. So you're trying to keep your overhead at about 10%, and now you're netting about 14%, net net.
yeah. So we would, and there's been a lot of due diligence from some key people in the industry that sort of created some financial modeling that a lot of people follow, and it was a good benchmark to follow because it kind of kept you in line with where the business was in order to be successful. But yeah, it's a changing industry, but the ones that have grown and kept up with it and added, like we were talking about earlier, the IT services to complement the portfolio are in a really good position, I think, to take advantage of that. Like a lot of other industries, I mean, there's a consolidation effort happening, and just like what Darren and I are jumping into now, we see a little bit of that. Private
Yeah.
equity, you name it, is everywhere. And so, but there's a lot of companies that have stood out on their own and built that over a period of time and have taken advantage of the last several years to make themselves stronger.
So aside from MSPs, are there any type of companies that they were buying? These equipment companies?
There wasn't from our perspective. I've
Yeah.
seen I've seen in the industry, especially as of late, where some larger organizations, none that I have an affiliation with, but are getting into some potential AI capability, where they're buying companies that are just starting out on the AI front. I've seen people where they've acquired standalone marketing companies to come in and be a marketing company for them, not only for generating revenue for that specific company, but also generating revenue as they're helping other companies from a marketing standpoint. So
Makes
they're
sense.
now offering those marketing services, which is fascinating, pretty interesting. So
Yeah.
that company is specifically doing some really cool things in the industry and making people think about other opportunities that may be out there.
That's pretty impressive. And I mean, when you think about, copier companies, you wouldn't think they'd be around, they'd be in business, but
Yeah,
evolution, survival, evolution makes them adapt and
certainly. Yeah,
figure out how to.
I've seen it. I've heard it for 30 some years, 30 years, I feel like. I mean, I'm dating myself, but Ever since I've gotten a career in digital technology took over, we've heard that print's going away and it's dying, and there's elements certainly of that. But with all of these emerging technologies that show up, it seems that it actually allows for more printing to take place. It's certainly an issue within the industry, especially after the pandemic hit, when everybody left the office, nothing was being printed. So there was some tough times for a lot of companies. But it's slowly but surely, from what I understand, I've been out of it now for about 2.5 years. I hear it's starting to come back for a lot of sectors.
What's coming back?
Some of the print, some of now that people are coming back in the office,
Oh,
they have
okay.
seen a spike. But with that said, technology and what's happening in the world is reducing some of that need to print, and so such a need for these companies to diversify their portfolio and find
Well,
other
that's
revenue
why I
streams.
think that's why it's smart for them to go buy the larger printing machines, and because that sector around like big print and around wallpaper or wall prints and that's growing. I
Yep.
mean that the actual physical, I don't know what they call it, the physical marketing or physical advertising is
Yep.
growing. That segment
It's
is growing.
It's growing, and there's certain in that space, there's certain manufacturers that play in it really, really well. Not all of them do.
Yeah.
So it changes the landscape of the competitive market. But if you can be out in the forefront of it, you can do some damage out there in the marketplace that not a lot of other people can do. There's a big infrastructure you have to build in order to just handle that type of device from a services perspective. So the ones that are taking advantage of it probably are seeing some key success out there. I know the company I used to be with are doing extremely well with it. They've got some great people, always have, but they're taking advantage certainly in the market.
Got it. That makes sense. Okay. So after doing the roll up in that space, what did you do next?
Yeah, so I took over after a few years of doing that. I became basically senior vice president of sales. So I ran sales for that entire organization up until I decided to part ways with them and go do some other ventures. But
How long have
um,
you ran sales there?
probably close to 5 years, roughly.
And so for that printing slash MSP slash so let me ask you this. So how did you so what as the one running heading sales, I'm assuming your goal is to attract talent, acquire talent, and then motivate them and keep them, keep them in your company. Tell me a little bit about how you thought about what your goal was, what your role was, what are your KPIs, and so forth, because that's
Yeah,
interesting.
certainly. Yeah, I mean, I was fortunate to inherited a great team, but also had to make it my own to some degree. And the leadership team around me did a really nice job um, when I first took over to help out with that. We wanted to kind of narrow the scope of the sales team. We kind of had two separate things going on, a really good part of the sales team, and then some of the others that probably needed performance enhancements or maybe get out of the business because it might not have been right for them. But the goal was to obviously grow the business, maintain the current base, and then expand services into those current customers. So that's where the IT, the MSPs came into play. What we did essentially is we had the gentleman that was acquired initially ran the MSP division, and he's a very, very bright guy. But because they didn't have a huge sales infrastructure on that side of the house, created subject matter experts. So the sales team on the office equipment division would utilize the expertise of those SMEs and become really joint venture into selling into new environments, whether it be a current customer that did not have the IT services and or just a new customer in general. It allowed those salespeople to go find new customers. So,
So let me just clarify there. So you had two sides of the business. You had the copier business and you had the MSP business. The copier
yeah,
business had a more developed sales infrastructure.
yeah.
How many salespeople were there?
People that were actually selling between
Yeah.
both selling feet on the street, managers, specialists that help people probably in the 40 to 50 range.
So you got 40 and 50 sales guys selling copiers and equipment. And
Yep.
then the MSP, how many salespeople did they have?
Maybe less than five.
Less than
But they were
five.
Yeah, but that was over a period of time grew into subject matter experts where at least they could help assist the 40 to 50 others that I was telling you
Oh, so
about.
they had nothing. So you actually had to develop those five.
Yeah, and
So they're
and so they became basically sales specialists that help partner with some of the folks selling those services. We certainly had guys that could do it on their own, but it
yeah,
just enhanced the capability in front of a customer to have those two folks working side by side. So we had to create comp plans for that shared revenue as
yeah.
well
So
to
how did you do
incentivize.
that? That's interesting
Well,
because now
it certainly had
you're
to take a lower percentage, but we had to make, and I can't remember what the numbers were specifically on that, but we had to make it at least strong enough to where we got the mindset from those 40 to 50 reps to where they would be incentivized to at least go out and talk about it. And that was part of it. Just go start the conversation, right? And let people know that we're doing it. And then it was a slow drip for a while, and then all of a sudden the light bulbs just kind of went off when these folks realized that they could partner together and the synergies were created between those partnerships. They all realized that they were all able to get stickier with the client and get into, working as a team is better than working as an individual.
yeah,
And that was tough. Salespeople are very territorial, as you probably well know. And
yeah.
so that took a little bit of time. But as both companies became more comfortable with one another and understanding that both sides could help one another in those endeavors, we had a lot of customers on the office equipment side. They had a lot of customers on the MSP side. And because they were sticky with their clients from a network and MSP internet or not, but a network standpoint, it allowed our guys to get into more doors. And then with their current base, instead of selling a device, for example, and coming back 3, 4 years later and saying, "Hey, I can upgrade you or I can get you a new device now," you could constantly keep going back to them with the services that we would offer. And it started working really, really well.
So which one did better? Going into the MSP clients and selling them equipment, or going to the equipment guys and selling them MSP services?
Uh, A little bit of both. I mean, it's a hard question to answer just because when the size of the office equipment company was so vast that we had so many more clients than the MSP at the time. I would say that if you got in the MSP world and you really had the conversation, the relationship was very sound. It was sort of easy if you were
Easier.
in the right time where they were with a contract from a competitive perspective. It
Yeah,
might be easier to bring that all together. Customers are certainly wanting to go to one company to handle everything as opposed to going to 3 or 4 different companies to handle these things. So that in and of itself between both divisions was something that worked very well because people saw they knew the name, they knew the company, we had a great reputation. And so as long as we were active and working together and actually going out and taking action to go see these clients and try to get in the door, the story started to resonate pretty well. So I'd say 50-50, just depending on who was actually using both sides to go cultivate those new relationships. It equally worked well.
interesting. And any cultural clashes? Any interesting stories there?
Well, I mean, there were certainly cultural clashes, and it really it has to do everything with what I just mentioned with sales and territorial disputes and all of that. Because, and I could tell I was in sales for a while. It's my account, it's my account, it's my account, and at the end of the day, if you're open to others coming in, and really that's more of trusting the people that are working with you. And I could tell you both sides, and that current company is still growing and doing extremely well. They have some fantastic people on both sides of the house. And the reality is when they're in front of customers and even if they're in the door, they felt that, they understood it, and it felt like the culture of the company behind the scenes was very positive, which it was. That could only help when they're actually in front of somebody.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. So when did you leave that role?
I left that role in I believe July of 2022.
Okay, and then
Yeah.
what did you do next?
So I became an executive vice president of company in the promotional industry space, ironically enough. And I'm not in it anymore. There's a reason for that, but I won't go into too much detail. But the company that kind of a lot of promises, equity, everything like that, just wasn't what it was sold to me as. And so 6, 7 months later, I'm doing something different, but I was with another company in that space out of Columbus, Ohio for a few years. Good company, great people. But at the end of the day, as I have been for years, ever since I sold my company in 2010, I have been wanting to get back out on my own or partner with the right person to get back into the entrepreneurial thing, not only from maybe just a selfish perspective, but also I love the ability to help people and take care of people and their families. And especially as I get older, both on a personal level and on a professional level, that's something that I have a great passion for. So that's ultimately why I left the company in 2022 because I had visions of doing something different. I just didn't know what it was yet.
Okay. And then so is that when you connected with Darren and started the search?
Yeah, interestingly enough, not right then and there. Darren, probably, a year and a half after I left the original technology company, Darren and I have known each other for 20 plus years. It goes back to I coach kids and our kids played on the same football team back in the day when they were 9, 10, 11 years old. And so I've known Darren for quite some time and been friends and have every now and then reached out and we're acquaintances after a while, just as families and kids grow and go off and do their own thing. I was literally on LinkedIn one day and I saw that he was in the multifamily space and doing some interesting things. And so I have some short-term rentals in the real estate game a little bit, but not on the multifamily side. So I was just curious and reached out. We had lunch and um, we started going into the short-term rental game when it was so big, and we were going to go into markets like Asheville, North Carolina, Charleston, South Carolina, Nashville, those types, Austin, Texas, those types of places. And I'm glad we didn't because the timing was such that it was you started to see some of that short-term rental game. There was so much of it out there that it was
Yeah.
becoming more and more difficult. And then prices and some of the economic things that were happening we just started to pivot. And as we were discussing a number of things, one of those was, why don't we look at buying an organization or two? And that started to fester into, well, one or two sounds great, but let's get into this and then see if we can, over a 5 to 10 year period, build out a portfolio of companies and create a holding company and then see where this goes, as opposed to just buying one and growing it, which is what we're doing right now. We're going to do it over a period of time. But
Yeah.
as we got more into that conversation and our connections and the people we know, it just made a lot more sense. And so we dove into it, started to build out sort of our plan of attack. It wasn't easy because finding companies is probably the most difficult part, especially when you're dealing with a lot of the brokerage mentality out there that just list companies and probably know how that is,
Yeah.
or just finding people that you can have alignment with in a conversation to create maybe a synergistic opportunity as you go along through the M&A process. What we try to find specifically are people that care about their legacy, care about their company, care about their people, to where when the next owner comes in, they equally care just as much as that previous owner. And we felt, and certainly it's one of the reasons I partnered with Darren, because Darren's a very high integrity guy. I trust him with everything I've got. I think he equally trusts me. And so as knowing his personality, when we have those conversations, we feel like if we're meeting with the right people, those things make sense to continue the conversation. So it's evolved quite a bit. We took probably a year to year and a half. We were in several LOIs, pulled out of several backed out because they may not have been worth what they originally were when we started the conversation. We had to pivot, and that didn't work out for them, and understand that. But
So when you started, let me go back. When you
yeah,
started, what was your buy box?
from just the industries we were looking at.
Yeah, from the beginning.
Yeah,
Like, what's the industry? What's the size of the
yeah.
business? What
When
geography?
Sure. When we first started out, we were looking in essentially home services. Primarily, reason why coming out of the pandemic, we realized where some of these companies, specifically residential HVAC and plumbing were in electrical companies were exploding. Everybody was doing stuff at their homes and putting money into it, recession-proof type of mentality. So we started creating these areas of opportunity for us, whether it's HVAC, plumbing, electrical, landscape, fertilization, you name it, anything that touched the home is where we were interested in. And then I think we would continue to pivot the more we get into it to understand how some of it's how the financials work with some of these companies. Some of it is who we're competing against in those worlds. And through the conversation, because the one we just acquired in December of last year is a commercial HVAC and plumbing company. Based on what we know about private equity, that was tough from a competition perspective because these guys were writing big checks and they were just trying to get into the game. And we realized that that was sort of becoming saturated to a sense where commercial may be the next wave. And we see that happening. But it's still a challenge to look at the next ones from an acquisition perspective. But that's what we're trying to create, the name, the brand, getting out there to as many people in the space as possible to know who we are and what our interests are. But geographically, what we did, because you asked about that as well, we were looking essentially in the Midwest, anywhere in Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana, maybe even so far as Tennessee, just because I go down there quite a bit. Um, and
So you
then
were
we,
looking home services, and then the companies that, and then you switch commercial services or yeah. And then so what companies have you like gone through under LOI and just kind of give me like your top three or top two
yeah,
examples of businesses that you went under contract and why it didn't work out.
yeah, probably the first one would be a residential HVAC company.
Okay.
Primarily, the reason it didn't work out is certain at a certain period of time, 1 or 2 year drip of revenue, a couple projects shot their revenue up to a level that they've never seen before. And from a future perspective, we did not feel like that work was going to maintain itself, that it was just a 1 or 2 year thing. The location didn't call for that type of work to continue. So therefore, the purchase price that may be in a 1 or 2 year time frame, when you broaden that out and look at an average over a 3, 4, 5 year period, it didn't make sense. And so
Okay.
we tried to bring that to the forefront, but that owner wanted a specific amount, and that was okay. We decided to walk away from that one.
Okay. And you
The
discovered that through quality of earnings report? Is
Yeah,
that okay?
yeah,
So
Q&E
so
and
QV. Okay.
yeah, and then we do have some advisor we'll work with, but at the end of the day, it was also a gut feeling.
Yeah.
And knowing that geographic location. It was pretty far from us, and so that was another reason why if we're going to do this, we're going to take a little bit of a gamble. I want to be right in their backyard
Makes
to
sense.
help manage it a little bit. The other one was more into a high-end drywall and large-scale construction standpoint. And that one was more of it just didn't feel right for us in that specific space. And
Okay.
not that it has anything to do with the space, the great company, great owner. It was just we saw a lot of this. And while we see that in some of the work that we do, there's a lot of other opportunities to create revenue streams that create more consistency, but also can scale it and grow it from that consistency at the same time once we get it
Okay.
started and going in the right direction.
So the drywall one was construction based and it was very kind of volatile in terms of like the volume. Was it also like located near you guys?
It was, and it was mostly in the commercial space as well. So it
Got
was
it.
it was large scale projects. Um, you know, Great business, great financials. We didn't know enough about it to where that was another concern. The owner who did, he'd been in it, knows it. We didn't know it as well as we probably would have liked. So there was probably some trepidation there when we looked at moving forward.
Okay. And then what's the next one?
The other one, quite frankly, we got into another small HVAC one. So that one was just it was we weren't really interested from the start. But we got into it quickly just to try to figure out if it made sense, and then we pulled out pretty quickly. And ironically, another one was we saw it just because of where we were located was a donut company of all things. Reputation was outstanding, and we made an offer. We didn't even get past it because there were some cash buyers, and it was a pretty quick and easy transaction. But that was just
Okay.
something.
Was it a donut store or a donut factory?
Store. Yeah.
Store.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is this like
And
one standalone store?
what's that?
Like a
Yeah,
Dunkin'
standalone.
Donuts or
Yeah, standalone, and just a reputation where you can go buy it at 1 o'clock in the morning and people standing out the door.
wow.
Pretty
How much
unique. It's
revenue was that store doing?
uh, I couldn't remember off the top of my head. Multiple millions, I can tell you that.
Okay.
Yeah, very very
Margin, do you
strong.
remember what the margin was?
I don't off the top of my head.
Okay.
No, it's
Interesting.
been a while. Yeah, but it was
Interesting.
great company, great reputation, still is, and
How many
so
people?
they probably in the 20s.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's cool. That's
yeah,
interesting. Yeah.
yeah, definitely.
So how do you find the business that you bought now?
Ironically enough, interesting, and that's why I think these relationships matter, right? Is that my wife was actually at a networking event with the previous owner of the company we acquired, and she met his wealth advisor and the owner's wealth advisor,
Yeah.
and knowing what Darren and I were doing from a search perspective, anytime she was talking to people outside of her industry, she was bringing up what we were after. And ironically enough, she met this gentleman and said, I may know a guy, one of my clients. And the next week, I was having lunch with the owner. And from there, we just got really hot and heavy into the numbers. We put an LOI in front of him right away. And then from there, spent several months doing due diligence, working with him. But he was also so gracious enough during the period of time while we were doing diligence to bring us into the company and had transparent conversations with his organization about what was going on. And we had several months of getting to know people, asking questions, figuring out kind of what we wanted this to look like, to where when we did make the acquisition, it was smooth and seamless. And it
Oh,
wasn't just,
nice.
hey, there's these two new guys that aren't from our space coming in to acquire us. And a lot of people knew us and felt comfortable with us. And I really, Darren and I both feel a lot of gratitude for the previous owner
Yeah,
allowing us to
that
do that.
requires a lot of courage from his part to
Yeah.
bring you guys before you even close, not knowing whether you're gonna be able to close or not. And so just to step back before, so did the wealth manager when you talked to your wife, like your wife just told him that you were looking to buy a business, or he said that, hey, I'm looking to sell a
But
business?
she did.
How does that conversation happen between two
Yeah.
people that are not really party to the thing?
Yeah, well, it's funny. Since my wife started her career in sales, she's chief strategy officer for a technology company herself, and she does a lot of networking and passionate about what she does, but certainly knew where my journey and Darren and I's journey wanted to go. And I think she brought it up quite frankly, and just, hey, knowing that he is a financial planner and has a lot of clients. One of our areas of opportunities, one of our parts of our search is going after wealth managers because we know that they have clients that are business owners and the right time is everything. And she simply just started the conversation about what we're after, what we're looking for, and started talking really about that HVAC home services kind of stuff. And then it turned into, I know a guy that's got this commercial company, and like I said, it just kind of worked out, and timing was everything.
That's incredible. So it's just randomly she mentioned that, hey, my husband is looking to buy a company in HVAC space. Who do you know that's thinking about
Yep.
selling?
Yep.
And then he just
Absolutely.
said, I have the right person. And he was already working with that seller as his client to prepare him to exit.
Well, the interesting part of that I was just going to mention is he knew that he wanted to, but the previous owner, he was going to wait until after 2025 because he knew he wanted to sell, but he was going to take the time to make sure that he got the company right, everything was squared away, and then start to move in that direction. And because of that one conversation, I was able to be introduced to him, which is great, again, great timing. So he got into the area where we knew what he wanted. He was pretty transparent. We saw the numbers and like we think we can make this work. As a result, we didn't have to compete against all of these other players. That it's a tough market right now. You got a lot of people wanting to buy companies on an individual level, on a smaller PE level, and then on a large PE level. So
So when you
great
talked
op.
to him, he knew exactly when he said what he wanted. Is that purchase price?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so he just knew what the purchase price is going to
He
be. Did you know
he
what the
knew.
terms are going to be?
Not at the time. We worked through a
Okay.
lot of that through diligence, and even in the last 30 days, some of those terms change, but not in a sense from pricing or anything that would break the deal, just more of terms and nothing earth-shattering. But yeah, it was
Oh,
pretty easy from the get-go to have those conversations. He knew what he wanted on that overall purchase price,
purchase
and
price. And then
we were able.
how did he find out? How did he know?
How
How
did
did he know the number? Like how did he come up with that number?
I think that was his, I think it was his, from what I understand, I want to put words in his mouth, but I
Yeah.
think he just was comfortable with the number after he's owned it for 7 years prior to us. He bought it off the previous owner. He had a
Okay.
great run, very successful number of years where he and the company did extremely well. And I think he was at the stage of life and said his wife was retired as well. And they both had a game plan for what that may look like for him and what it would take to exit and live comfortably and create the life that they want after this. So
Okay.
he was pretty clear with that from the get-go. And so knowing that, it was a good opportunity for us to be just transparent from the offset or the outset of that. And we
So
looked
he
at the numbers.
okay, so you just met him and so when you met him for the first time, what was his aside from the purchase price, how much you want, what was he asking you guys about? What was he interested in? What was his focus? What did he focus on?
Taking care of his people.
Okay.
Yeah, which is again, uh, respectable certainly, and we at this point, everyone that was with the company is still with the company. That's important to us as well. And maintaining that trust and not changing things after things were promised and all of that good stuff. Not to say we won't lose people or somebody won't do the job and we make changes, but that was his two priorities. Us, Darren and I obviously we have our business experience and ran companies and all of those things. But when it comes to specific commercial HVAC and plumbing, he certainly had his concerns. But the more we talked, the more he saw our vision and our strategy, the more comfortable he became with where we could take this thing. And the reality is, some of the folks that are in the organization have helped tremendously. We have implemented a president to lead the day to day within the organization who's been with the company close to 20 years. And we
Nice.
have the utmost trust and faith in him, along with the other team members, to help us in this journey. And they're all really open to the growth and where we're heading, and they really want to be a part of something. So we're excited about that. But that were
Nice.
his few concerns that he
So
had.
okay, so mainly, will you be the one that's going to take care of his people, and then whether you keep your capabilities around HVAC. So when he bought his business, was he from the HVAC space when he acquired it?
He was an employee for the company. He
Oh,
was,
so he actually an employee in the
yeah.
company, and then 7 years ago he bought it from the previous owner, the founder.
Yeah, yeah. He bought it. He acquired it from the original owner. Really good working relationship. They created an opportunity where he would take over the business, and he did, and had really good high success, and it
And
was it was very seamless for them.
and then that original owner is still involved.
The original owner, which is great, is he's around. It's a funny story. He's around. He owns the building. We lease it off of him. We
Okay.
hope to buy it over a certain period of time. But we launched our website within probably the last 30 days. And again, some of the things we want to do is when we say we're going to do something, we're going to stand behind that no matter what it is. That's who we want to be. And we created just a legacy portion of our website to really pay homage to both of those gentlemen because
Nice.
they've done a hell of a job in not only creating the business, but maintaining the relationships, not only internally, but externally in the marketplace. So there's a section of our website, we've got them pictured together where they
That's
came in
cool.
and joined us we had a lot of people come in, but also when we did the pictures internally for our own team members to put out on the website, they came back in and were part of that. So
That's
that was
awesome.
good. And I hope they can see that we, again, not only us, but the employees and the customers that are out there realize that they're still around.
Yeah.
I know even internally, my team members rely on both of those gentlemen heavily, whether it's just a conversation to pick their brain or previous owner is still really helping from a consulting perspective because he's got a lot of great relationships and has a lot of knowledge on how to price and bid and win deals, and so he's still around helping us cultivate that as we enter this thing. But
Oh, that's
they've both
cool.
been extremely beneficial and very welcoming to both of us.
Oh, that's awesome. That's a
Yeah,
really cool story for sure. That's awesome. So
yeah.
what when you bought it, well, you just recently bought it. So what was the revenue?
They were doing roughly averaging about 10 million a year.
Okay, 10 million.
Yep.
And is it like what's the EBITDA margin on that?
They were a margin on that. They were probably running 28, 25 to 28%
That's high.
bottom line high. So they were doing well. Running very, made sure that they were very efficient with their people and their projects. But again, they knew what that looked like. If they maintained and took on the right projects, they could
Yeah.
maintain that. And certainly, number of projects are different from that perspective from a financial standpoint. But again, relationships, the right clients, the right general contractors, which is everything to us to have those partnerships, help drive that a lot.
And these are big commercial projects, right? You're
Yep.
servicing like hospitals, you're servicing like what kind
Hospitals, a
of
lot of
costs?
distribution centers, a lot of warehouses. Like we've done a few Amazon distribution centers. Companies like Granger, we've done a distribution center for them down
Oh,
in Louisville,
nice.
Kentucky before. So,
That's great
better, yeah,
because I know Cincinnati and Ohio in general, the manufacturing is going to be growing like crazy. So there are
yeah.
a lot of different companies that are coming. I know Andro is coming and building next to you in Cincinnati, I believe, right?
Yeah,
Um,
certainly, and there's a ton of growth. I mean, you look at Columbus, for example, and while we're
yeah,
not we do some work in Columbus. We want to expand upon that just because of what the growth trajectory is
yeah,
in Columbus. But ever since Intel was announced to build there, it's just become a different place, and it was always growing. But now people kind of similarly compare that to Austin, Texas, at the
yeah,
moment. I mean, it's
yeah.
just that
I'm
much
very
growth in
bullish
the
on
place.
Ohio, but I'm very
Yeah,
bullish on Ohio, and I think you have a lot of technology companies and
yeah,
yeah, well, even in your neck of the woods in Cincinnati, at Palmer Luckey building like a $4 billion operation there with like 4,000 people. I think you're gonna have a lot of other companies coming in to service them and then to build around them. So it's a great opportunity for you guys to be out there and grow that business. So what was the multiple on the purchase?
um, it was let me just say it was fair. It was good. It was equal for both sides. I don't want to go into specific numbers,
Got it.
but it was probably what you would see standard without having a lot of reoccurring revenue, if that makes sense.
Got it. Okay, so that's talking about the recurring revenue. Is there a maintenance portion of the business?
We do, and we have a preventative maintenance department, and that's one of the areas of opportunity that we really want to grow and scale. This company did a lot of their work was basically new design and install. We have an engineer
Okay,
on staff, sets us a little bit apart from just the everyday commercial contractor in this space because a lot of them just do spec work. We're
sure.
fortunate we've had an engineer on staff for quite some time. Kevin's fantastic, knows the business, really great at his craft, but that was, I would say, 95 to 99% of the business was the new design and install working with general contractors on new buildings. And since we've taken over, and they started the services organization before we acquired it, but we want to take that and blow it up. We want to expand upon it. Any company that has these commercial systems, we could certainly service, but that's an area for us to create that recurring revenue stream and build it to where we can help our organization, investment people, you name it, bring
And
more capabilities.
and right now that section, the maintenance team, because when you build a business that is design and install, you're building it with a certain margin of the design install margin.
Yep,
Now, if you're going to build a maintenance business, some of the comp models may not work on the
right.
maintenance side because your margin is much lower and you're relying on recurring. Obviously, the maintenance side gets you much more better valuation because you have a recurring model. And
Yep,
once you sign a contract, usually people don't really change it unless you're messing up. But in
right.
general, you're going to be there for 3 to 5 years at the minimum. So how have you guys made that transition from being a design install company to design install plus maintenance?
Yeah, well, we're not there yet. We're just going to get more sophisticated with it and add the right people. But also, I think in that realm, you have to have a number of different things going on. One, you have to have the right people servicing the equipment. That to me is first and foremost. But then it's how are you obtaining these new clients? The interesting part for us is we're not always direct to the consumer, meaning if we're helping with an Amazon
Oh,
warehouse, for example, like I mentioned, we're going through the general contractor and they're our customer at that particular time. Not to say
yeah,
that Amazon's not,
yeah,
but where we're trying to get to is once that handoff is done and that job is done, who are we talking to then get the services contract? And
yeah,
that's more of a direct to consumer conversation. And then as we build that out, we're also creating a tenant finish division as well, where we're doing a lot of remodel constructions, moves, retrofits, you name it, to where much smaller revenue, but yet we're going through general contractors at the same time, but we're closer to the client as well, the end user, if you will, to where we can then go and say, hey, once we're done with this, what about a services contract?
yeah.
And so one of the things we're trying to figure out is when we wake up in the morning, how are we obtaining those contracts? How are we getting out to the marketplace to know, let them know, one is we have the services, but then how are we marketing it? How are we selling it? What's our pricing contracts? So we're modeling that out even more so now that we have the website, creating the LinkedIn pages and all of that. Now our next step is to create a company-wide marketing campaign
Well, I
on a
think
lot of different scenarios.
honestly, you don't really, and I've seen this happen. So
Yeah,
I've seen it designed and built. You really don't need too much marketing. You need more, it's more sales
yeah,
oriented. So what you probably need is have boots on the ground that as soon as the tenant takes over the building, that you position yourself as the educator on that building. You know,
yeah,
especially since you have a designer engineer on staff, you probably have the plans of the building, and you have a lot of information about that building that um, the their building engineer or their building maintenance, asset manager has to have. And then
yeah.
so you position yourself as a resource to that person in all things, air conditioning and all that. Like you have like you have the data, you have the information that they need, and then you can position yourself as an educator, if you will, on that equipment, on that design that you put in place. And then as long as you make that connection early on, as soon as the tenant comes in or as soon as the new owner comes in, then it's just a matter of like now you have a warm, you're positioned
Yeah,
as the expert, you're positioned as the specialist, you're positioned as the one who has the data, and then you can command recurring model from there
yeah,
because for them
I'm
to
with you.
access the data, to access the information, to not interrupt their business, they need you.
Right.
And I've seen this in the architectural. So I'll give you an example. I have a client who do M&A for architectural firms, and one of the most fascinating company that I've seen was an architectural firm that was able to do the design, build part plus the recurring revenue just by positioning themselves with, they do high towers, they do large buildings, they do big commercial, malls and stuff. And so what they did, they positioned themselves early on that, listen,
Yeah,
we have the plans. So
yeah,
anytime you want to do TI, anytime you just come to us. We're not going to give you anything, but we will take care of it and we will do it faster. We're already permitted. We already signed off on the whole thing. So
right.
therefore, it'd be easy for us. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah,
So
strike while the iron's hot, so to speak, and that's the
yes,
time, right? And so that's
yes,
for us is building upon those relationships, having the right process, and you talked about it, salespeople, because that's
yes,
near and dear to my heart, having the right
yes,
not only salespeople, but then the process and methodology behind it to bring it home. Because I
yeah,
agree, it's the right timing. We want to know that every day we wake up and we have people doing that, so that we're hitting the
yes,
streets as much as possible. Because I don't know enough. I don't think people are doing it enough to where, not that it's easy per se, but as long as we're in front of people, especially like you said, if we designed it and installed it, what better company to handle it? And
yeah,
then we're expanding that property managers, facilities directors of companies, like
yeah,
attacking them, even if it's something we haven't done the work on up front. there's a need there, and it's just timing. And are you having any pain points, anything like that with previous company? It's an opportunity for us for sure.
Yeah, it's knowing essentially who the asset managers are, who are the people that your contact point, and then just being there
Yep.
constantly in conversation with them. And then for you, for example, like you have buildings that you already like this company's been around for how long? 20 years, 30
34
years,
years. Yep.
34 years. So how many units, how many AC units have they installed? You know what I
Exactly.
mean? So you
Yeah.
got to find every one of them, have a
Yep.
list of every building, and then
Yep.
you can always go back and say, listen, we installed that thing.
Sure.
We signed the permit on that thing.
Yeah.
And then even if let's say an asset manager or property manager is not like working, is not cooperating, you know, the way I think of it is very similar to what you said earlier around the copiers. There's a contract that's going to expire on the copier.
Yep.
Well, that person's going to expire from that company. It's going to change jobs, going to do this. It's
Sure.
going to be a new guy,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
then I'll show up as it's a brand new
Yep.
conversation. Hey, congratulations on the job. Did
Yep.
you know that we installed this thing? And
Absolutely.
then
Well, it
we're
happens with
gonna
GCs even. We work with a GC and then all of a sudden they're at a different GC and we got to just
yes,
maintain those relationships. But
yes,
it's funny you speak of that list of all the jobs we've ever done. And,
yeah,
probably 2, 3 weeks ago, that list was asked about, like, and asked for. So we're compiling that as we speak to have it as a outreach opportunity for us with these
yeah,
clients.
yeah.
It's a need.
How many
It's
sales guys do you have in the company now?
just currently one.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we
Wow.
have a number of people that do, not necessarily sales for their day to day. It's more they have sales sort of capabilities within the certain where the estimators call in GCs on the services side, but it's not necessarily dedicated salespeople.
So
That's
you need
yeah,
like boots on the ground. You need to
yeah,
build team of 40.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, right. But at least right now, if we had that, one or two people, even on the services side, daily,
Yeah.
dialing for dollars, building relationships, that's key for us for
No,
sure.
but I truly believe that you need to, as soon as you can, invest in getting that first outside salesperson
Yep.
that's gonna, and then, and invest a lot of time in building them into a $3 million revenue generator person,
Yep.
and then learn from that experience, and then copy paste like 20 times. Like that
Exactly. Yeah.
has to happen like immediately, like as soon as you can, because I've seen it like are you familiar with Fast Science who you're talking
Oh yeah,
about?
sure.
So I'm owned one of their franchises, and their company just completely shifted in terms of sales once they implemented the outside salesperson. And then they
Yeah.
started sending out their people to, and they were going after the same customers. Amazon distribution center, they need signage, they need everything, and they will
Yep.
have literally a salesperson knock the door, talk to the facility manager, and then ask them like, "Hey, do you need signs? Do you need this? Do you need that?" And that's all they did. People that didn't really know anything about distribution centers or anything, but they could sell signage
Yeah.
and
Exactly.
and then they
Yeah. Well, as I
they
said, coming from my background, I get the importance of it. I mean, revenue's everything and sales is
yes,
everything. Without it, what are you? I mean, referral growth can only take you so far, which I
yeah,
feel like we have, but having those dedicated people that wake up and eat, breathe, and sleep this kind of stuff, it'll take us to another level for sure.
that's awesome, cool. Well, thank you for joining us, Sean. We learned a lot.
Yep.
I appreciate you sharing and being open, and hopefully we'll see you in a year from now and see how the evolution and the growth has
Absolutely. Love
happened.
that, Jay. Thanks for the opportunity. I
Cool, man.
appreciate it, bud.
Thank you.
Have a great
Take care.
day.
Have a good one.
Thanks.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.